Good, how are you? It's been a while.
Good to see you here.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What did you say again?
Good to see you.
Oh, yeah, good to see you. Good to see you again. Oh, I'm having a cup of coffee too.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So, so you were just in Japan.
Yes, yes.
So did you fly into Kyoto?
No, from Jeju Island to Osaka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I take the train to go to Kyoto.
Yeah. Yeah, that I guess that's from Seoul. That's much easier than coming into Tokyo.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So are you in Tokyo home?
Yeah.
Okay, got you. I love the background of the character. Yellow.
The cat.
I see. Did you draw?
Yeah. No, no, no. I am in I am in a karaoke place
Oh, I see.
because I can't practice in my apartment.
Oh.
Um, most Japanese apartments, most I don't know elsewhere, but in Tokyo, most people can't practice in their apartments,
Mm.
and they don't allow pets. They don't allow music,
Oh.
unless you have a keyboard with
Right,
earphones.
right.
So there are these karaoke places, and this one is called Meniki Neko,
Uh-huh.
and Neko is cat.
Uh-huh.
There is cat paraphernalia everywhere,
Oh, I see.
but it's they and from 7 a.m. until 12 noon,
Uh-huh.
the rooms are about 14 cents an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's incredible.
Wow.
And they're I mean it's a nice size,
Uh-huh.
and the AC, you have control on your own room.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very comfortable. They have a on down the hall, they have a they call it a drink bar. So there's
Oh.
a coffee machine and juice
Sure,
machine. So
sure.
that's where the uh I probably can't see it, but the little cat
Oh,
paw for
piano,
the,
yeah.
yeah, for the coffee. And so in the morning you see a lot of instrumentalists
Oh,
come in, because it's incredibly cheap,
right.
and the rooms are they're pretty well soundproof. I mean,
Oh.
I hear it now, but if someone is next to you and they've got the machines turned up really loud and they're singing, you'll hear them, but it's not so bad.
I
But yeah, and you hear when I first started living here and had to practice not in my apartment,
Mhm.
and people said, "Oh, you go to a karaoke," and I'm thinking karaoke bar,
Mm.
but these are it's like practice rooms. This is 2 floors, has maybe 15 rooms on each floor,
Wow.
and this room is maybe 8 by 8, so it's a nice size.
Uh-huh.
Has a sofa and a
Uh-huh.
chair.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very comfortable.
Oh, wow.
And but at first it seemed very strange and uncomfortable.
Oh.
Uh and then it was like, oh, but then and people give lessons
Uh-huh.
here.
Oh.
Um you will I've if you don't need a piano, it's great. Sometimes I will meet a composer here
Oh, okay.
who you know, if they want to, hear some samples of stuff that, I
Sure,
mean, you
sure.
can't do that in a coffee shop or whatever.
Right.
So you come here, and it's just absolutely normal when you say, "Oh, we'll meet at Manikineko," and they're like, "Oh, okay." It's very normal.
Wow, I learned one important thing from you today.
Yeah. And
Wow.
you certainly can't find, I mean, even in New York, you can't find a practice room at this rate.
Right. Yeah, right. Never.
Never. And there are music stores and some practice room places, but they're charging for a small room, no piano, anything from $10 an hour up.
Oh,
And the only difference is, here there's a karaoke machine right here, and you hear this. I mean, I guess if you wanted a practice room that's completely silent, maybe you'd go to the music store where it's soundproof.
Sure.
But it's fine, and yeah.
Yeah.
And they are and they're everywhere. So
Oh.
I mean, this one is maybe an 8-minute walk from my apartment, and maybe 1 minute walk to the train station. So if I'm going, yes, if I'm going somewhere like today, I'm going to a rehearsal after this.
Oh, okay.
So the train station is right there.
Oh, wow.
And you become a member, and you show them your barcode. And so no matter which location you're at,
Right.
and because I've been a member so long,
Right.
now my rentals are 15% off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So generous.
Oh, I know. And they notified me that soon my membership level will go up, and membership is free. So,
Oh,
but
wow.
my and it will go to 20% off.
Wow.
And I'm going, it's 14 cents an hour.
Oh my gosh.
But 12 to 6, it becomes more expensive, maybe $5 an hour, which is still really good. But from 6 p.m. on through the night, it can be 20, 30, $40 an hour,
Ah, okay. That's
because
cool.
that's when people get off
Right.
work.
Right.
And people will come here. I mean, singing karaoke with friends is very popular.
Right.
Not for me, but people will come here, and you can bring in your own beer and your own food. So it's a nice, comfortable,
I see.
social spot.
Ah, I see. I never did the karaoke in Japan, but I now I know what it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad to see you, even though it's Zoom setting.
Yeah, that's good to see you. Your questions were very good.
Oh, yeah?
And I like, as I'm reading it, and you had your subtitles like easy, easy, not easy, and more personal, and they were. And some of them, like, really, I mean, some of them made me think.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was thinking, when I read them, I felt very open, and like emotionally open and vulnerable when I was reading them.
Thank
And
you
I
so
thought, oh, I said, when we meet and we talk, I hope I'm still that, like, open
much. Sure.
as I was when I read them.
Well, yeah, yeah, whichever you're comfortable, just
Oh,
yeah.
I do an interview series for International Clarinet Society. It's composer of the month, and sometimes the composer just wants me to send them the questions, and they write the answers. Some want it just to be video, and then I have to transcribe it.
Ah,
I don't transcribe it, but
you
AI as yeah. And then some want a combo of where they will write it, or some will start writing, and then they got, no, 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 let's just talk. It'll be easier than me trying to write it. So it was nice to see these questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed through reading my questions.
Yeah.
So before we start conversation like an interview, I wanted to express my little, I mean, big and deep gratitude, but short introduction for you. So can I start?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Today guest is someone I've admired for years, Thomas Piercy, a remarkable clarinet and hichiriki performer. Tom is known for bridging cultures and expanding what's possible in sound. But beyond the cloud and performances, there's a personal story too. a brilliant clarinet. I'm sorry, a little bit nervous. Oh. A brilliant clarinetist, Thomas Pierce, trained at Juilliard. Tom's journey has taken him for beyond the concert hall. He's one of the rare artists who moves effortlessly beyond words. Classical and contemporary, New York to Tokyo, clarinet hichiriki. His Tokyo to New York series has not only premiered hundreds of new works, but also created space for cultural dialogue and musical storytelling. As someone inspired by boundary-breaking musicians, I'm genuinely excited to have this conversation. Tom, thank you for being here today. Yeah.
Thank you for asking me to talk to you.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yay. So, can you take me back to your early days at Juilliard? What drew you specifically to the clarinet, and what was that environment like for a young musician?
Oh, I moved to New York to study clarinet. Of course, I had my childhood clarinet hero was Gervais Depire.
Uh-huh.
And when I was I wanted, and also all since I was 7, I wanted to move to New York.
Oh.
And I grew up on a farm in Virginia. And the family went up to New York for the World's Fair. And I remember then very vividly going, oh, I want to live here. It's like the opposite of a farm. But I mean, I loved being on a farm with the animals. I went, I want to live here. Had nothing to do with music. I was 7. I knew nothing. I just knew I wanted to live there. And so, but then that sort of stayed in my head that I was in high school and so I want to live in New York. That was,
Oh.
and so my interests growing up were in music, but also acting, singing, Broadway stuff. And so I got in touch with Gervais Depire.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a summer festival in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And, this was before the internet. So I had seen an ad for that festival.
Ah.
And I thought, oh, I'll call him and see if I can take some lessons with him. My cousins, my mother from England, I still have relatives there. I assumed he was still living in England, and I was prepared to move to England to study with him.
Oh.
So I called the festival and they gave me his number and he answered the phone and I told him who I was. I mean, it was crazy to think that he would even pick up his phone. And so he said, oh, well, I'm living in New York City now. So why don't you come up to New York City and we'll have a lesson and take it from there.
Oh, wow.
So I went up, had a lesson. We hit it off. Great. And he said, oh, by the way, I teach at Manners. And so he said, why don't you go to Manners and they can pay for your lessons instead of you paying for them.
Wow.
So I went to Manners for 2 years studying with him. And then after Manners, I just kept studying with him for years and years and then stayed great friends. And so I moved to New York thinking I would be a clarinetist, but also an actor.
Okay.
And I was on the audition, circuit of doing the auditions in the city and some off Broadway shows, and some of them that were just acting, not singing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big surprise to me going into that sort of professional theater world because I had no idea of what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of knew what the music world was like, but I had no idea what the acting world. And at that time, it seemed, from me, everything was so based on how you looked. And the typecasting and all of that. And I became too preoccupied with how I looked.
Okay.
and too self-conscious about it.
Mm,
And with the clarinet, I rarely thought about how did I look.
mm.
I mean, I cared about how I
Right,
looked when I walked out on stage.
right.
But when I would go to an audition or when I go to a lesson or I'm in school or you're in rehearsal, I
Mm-hmm.
was more concerned about how I was playing.
Right.
And so I quit pursuing the acting because it was just messing with my insecurities.
I see.
I mean, occasionally I still will do some acting, some singing. I teach singing, which I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as going into that career, I thought, oh, this is not for me. I feel much more confident and stronger in music.
I see.
And so that led me to New York. And then I was at Manas. And then I also wanted to study conducting. So I studied conducting at Juilliard.
Uh-huh.
Leon Rushinoff, I studied with him outside of the school
Oh,
and went to Juilliard to study conducting.
okay.
And that was also eye-opening because I don't really play the piano.
Ah.
And the other students in the conducting studio, they all played the piano.
Right.
So when they would have to do stuff, it was a lot easier for them to play the scores and everything.
Right.
But I learned so much.
Mm.
I mean, I quit playing clarinet for 2 years because it was just taking up so much time.
Right.
Uh, but I feel that it ended up helping my clarinet playing when I went back to that.
Right.
But it was also one of those things where I, as a conductor, I wanted to conduct really good orchestras.
Mm.
And those openings are very few and far between.
Right.
And also I thought I I felt confident of myself as a musician,
Mm.
but the skills needed for a conductor, piano skills, which are very important. It helps to know about string playing.
Right.
And I looked around and was honest with myself. There are people here who, not even thinking about if they're better musicians.
Mm-hmm.
They just have better skills than I do
Mm-hmm.
before they even get on the podium.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, back to the clarinet. I feel good about the clarinet. And I still get called occasionally to conduct things, and I love it. And that way I'm not frustrated pursuing a career in conducting. It's just when it comes to me, then I can feel good about it.
Right.
Yep. But being a young musician in New York at that time was very exciting. I mean, this was the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And so it was I mean, it was if you've read about New York in those times, it was very hardcore.
Right.
But for a young person, that's
Right.
really exciting.
Right.
Manas and Juilliard at that time were both very small schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to know the other people, you got to know your teachers. The faculty was very small. Most of the faculty were well-known performers. So you felt close to that, and I felt like, oh, these people are doing this. I'm this close to them.
Mm.
Then there is hope for me that I can do this as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So you study with the legendary figures like, as you mentioned, Leon Rushnoff and then
Yeah.
Yajamare is the pair. So what's something specific, one of them taught you that still guides your playing today?
The um, One of the most important things that Gervais told me, and he told me in my very first lesson with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he asked me if I had a piece, said, I'm going to tell you something. You have a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking in my case. I had a Post-it. I didn't have I mean, that was my piece of paper. He said, I want you to write this down. And he said, do something, say something, don't be predictable. And he meant this. He said, this is about your clarinet playing, but it is also your life. I I was being trained as a soloist at that time. I had no interest in orchestral playing. By that point, I had played in orchestras, and I love orchestral music, but it wasn't for me to sit in an orchestra. So I went to people who were soloists or could train me for that. So I wrote it down. I put it in my case. I still have that Post-it. I had it laminated because it was getting really old. And many years later, I would, and I would have it in my clarinet case. I would look at it all the time, and in rehearsals or before a concert, and it sort of freed me to do those things, but also reminded me, yes, when I'm playing, do something, say something. And probably the most of it is don't be predictable.
Wow.
Which when you're playing with other people, sometimes is good and sometimes isn't. It keeps people on their toes. And then other than all the wonderful things he taught me, little specifics like fingerings and stuff like that. But many years later, I was giving a set of concerts, the same program. He had moved back to London, but he was in New York for something. I asked him to come by and listen to me and the pianist play. We would play the program for him, and we were giving the concerts the following week. So he listened, it was all fine. And then walking down Broadway back to his apartment, and he said, "Tom." I was like, "Oh no." He said, "You can't go out in public playing like that." And I was trying to not cry, but I did start crying. He only meant it in the absolute best way possible. It was not meant to hurt me. He was not that kind of a teacher at all. We also had known each other long enough that he knew how I would take it, good, good and bad. And it was like, okay. I thought, when we played for him, I thought it was time, but it needed, and then later, we kept talking about that after the statement, because after quite a few minutes of silence, I went, "Well, that was kind of rough." And he said, "I know you want to play at this level. You want to be with other people at this level. If your level is here, you need to do something to make it be here." And what I heard was here. He said, "It's not down there." But he said, "I know what you want. I know what you're capable of. And what I just heard is not what you're capable of." And I said, "Oh, I totally understand it, but boy, that's rough to hear." But I thanked him for it. And then every few years we would bring up those two comments and how one was beautifully enlightening and wonderful, and one was a big slap in the face. But both were very, very important. And both of them stay in my head of, yes, there are times when I'm practicing or rehearsal and I think, no, this is not okay. Yeah. So those were the two things he said. Yeah, that were incredible. Leon Russianoff, he was quite a character, larger than life, and super, super high energy. And he would come to my concerts in New York. And he would always come up to me, and he knew that I was studying with Gervais. And Gervais did not want me studying with other people. But he would go, Leon would come backstage as, "You need to come study with me." And, it was like, Leon, I'm studying with Gervais. He's like, "Oh, okay, fine." And then he came to a concert once, said, you need to come study with me." And at this point, Gervais, and I was older and it was in my early 30s, Gervais had moved back to London. And Leon knew this. And he said, you know, Gervais doesn't live anymore. Doesn't live here anymore. So he said, come over to the studio. And I said, okay, Leon, I said, you of course have an incredible history of students and making students get work and get jobs.
Right.
I said, a lot of your students sound alike. And no offense to them, but I don't want to sound like them. My style of playing, back then there were more differences. There was the English school of clarinet playing, which of course Gervais was proponent of. I said, I don't want to sound like them. I said, what I would like is your students all have incredible fingers. And so there must be something you're doing that consistently your students have got phenomenal technique. So he said, come over. And he said, let's just work on something else. And he says, I'm not interested in changing your style of playing. He said, I want you to play the clarinet better. And so I went and we took a summer. I didn't have much going on that summer. And we started out with like a C major scale whole notes.
Oh, wow.
And he said, you know, trust me to do this and then decide later if this works for you. And personality, I always liked him. And so I sort of was like, okay, I just have to take a leap of faith and follow his instructions. And it was great. I mean, the detail that he would have me listen to. And he also knew that I was busy as a performer, and he would teach me all these different things of how to learn music faster. I mean, I'm sure they apply to all instruments, but it really, that helped. I mean, on a professional level, learning how to learn music faster because I needed to. I was playing a lot of new music, so I didn't have weeks to learn pieces. That was great. And one of his things he would say to me often, and I'm not sure I 100% believe, but he said, if you play in tune, you sound good. Because I'm so obsessed with my tone, the colors, the dynamics. But he would hear some little intonational things. And he would always say, if you're into, he said, that should be your first priority. Then your tone, then your colors, then your dynamics. And again, I'm not 100% sure I agree with it, except when you do hear someone out of tune, that sticks with you more than their tone.
Right.
So that was one of the important things that he said that has stuck with me.
Wow. So those like big but sweet and short advice or lessons
Yes.
resonate you for whole life as a class.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, and I have another question for you. When you're performing solo versus in chamber music settings, how does your mindset shift? Do you love about each?
It definitely shifts.
Uh-huh.
And of course, when I'm doing chamber music, I listen to the others more. Because I went many, many years where I didn't play that much chamber music. I mean, most of my concerts were clarinet and piano. And then, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I started feeling, you know, playing constantly playing clarinet and piano recital. It's one thing, it's very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like you're carrying the
Right.
whole program because you basically are, even though you're being helping a lot with the pianist.
Right.
And there were times when I would put one chamber piece on the program and go, oh, I really like this. It is so, and also I think quite often chamber pieces are better, for lack of a better word, are better than just clarinet and piano. I just thought it offered me more, it offers the audience more. It got to the point that I was thinking, who wants to go to a clarinet and piano concert? You know, as opposed to clarinet violin, piano, or clarinet cello piano, or quartet, that seems to be more exciting. And working with composers, it seems they're more excited to write chamber music. But my mind definitely changes. My mind changes. I have to deal with my ego of, when I'm the clarinet and it's clarinet and piano, or with orchestra, it's, I'm the boss. I have the last say, this is the tempo.
Right.
And when with its clarinet and piano, this is the tempo. And in my head, I mean, I try to be polite and, polite, respectful. But in my head, I'm going, no, that is my tempo. But I would try to say, this is our tempo. This is the tempo. Unless, Poulenc put it at 144, then it's like, okay, that's the composer's tempo. Or this is the style I want. So many things were they were mine. And I had very, very strong opinions of how I would want pieces to go. And that did not always go over well with some collaborators who wanted to have more of a say. But in my head, I was going, I have to be the one who has the final say. When it comes to clarinet and piano, especially when I'm playing pieces that are written for me, or if I've worked with the composer, I'm thinking, no, that is my responsibility. I have to have the final say. And quite often that dynamic it's not a democracy. Then you go into chamber music and you're like, oops, this is a democracy. And I have to change the way I think about this. Even if it's a piece written for me, I feel that I have to ask for more of a consensus. There are times where I'll feel super, super strong about something. And if it's people I've worked with for a while, we'll go, okay, I'm giving you this one. Okay, we'll follow you here. Or if the pianist is going, no, I really, and we'll ask, how strong do you feel about that? And they go, and it can be, I really don't care which way. Or if it's really, okay, you get this one, I get this one. And also that listening so much to the other players. As a soloist, of course, you are listening, but I feel for me, I'm listening more to myself first, and then listening to the others and how it fits. But when I'm in chamber music, it really, really am so obsessed with listening to the other players.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So do you have any worst collaboration in your life, or as a as a soloist?
Yes, I have had to tell a conductor, and we won't name names, but the whole thing of, this isn't a democracy. And, and you'll probably get this with many soloists who work with conductors.
Right.
Conductors often, I mean, hopefully they know the piece. If it's an old piece or if it's a new piece, they've looked at it. Of course, they're going to have opinions about it, and they are running the orchestra. That is their job. I feel that their job is to follow me, of course, if it's a concerto in name or not. And again, especially if it's something written for me, then I feel, I mean, if it's Mozart, of course, I'm going to think my tempo is more important than the conductor's tempo. He's not a clarinetist, and I'm hired to play the concerto. So there had been maybe 2 times where I've had to, not in front of the orchestra. I mean, I'm sure orchestras pick up on, conflict, but, take the conductor aside and just say, I'm sorry, but you need to follow me. Especially if it's something written for me, is that this is my piece. I've worked with the composer. This is what I want. Please follow me. And, this is not a democracy. And someone has to have the final word. And in this concerto, that has to be me. And I've tried to say it politely, but the words are strong when you're telling a conductor. Yeah. And I recently, I shouldn't say, well, yeah, I'll say recently I had to tell a conductor and said, just beat 4 and leave the rest of it to the players. Because he was trying to do too much. It's like he didn't trust me, he didn't trust the players. And you're telling a conductor, and I said, don't interpret. And as I'm saying the words, I said, you're telling a conductor, don't interpret. Basically, I was saying, we just need a metronome up there. Because he had gone too far and micromanaging everything. And the piece is such that none of that was needed.
I see.
So those were, some of the rougher ones.
I see.
Yeah. But it's really like less than, these numbers on my head. Both. And I often tell, sometimes people will ask about composers and the same thing. And I will say less than 5. And I'm pretty sure it's less than 5 composers who I will never, ever play their music again. Now, there might be composers who are thinking, I never want Tom to play my music again. And that's fine. It goes both ways. But after working with so many composers, I think just having less than 5 is a pretty good number. And it rarely, I will say, of those less than 5, it is not because of their music. Because I've played great music, I've played bad music. I know I will play bad music again. And we don't even need to define what bad is. I mean, it's just my opinion of what's bad. It is always a personality thing. Sometimes it's just, 2 people that, the chemical imbalance or whatever reason it is. And I'm not saying it's them. It could be me, but it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally understood. Yeah. I'm more curious about, as a performer context. So you are a clarinetist and then hichiriki performer. So how did you first encounter the hichiriki?
Well, because I was practicing. Here's my little hichiriki. Yeah. I mean, it is very little. No keys, double reed. Oh, here we are, double reed. But it is, because you've heard it. It is so loud, but it can also be very soft. And I try to make sure in the pieces I play and ask them, I do want something soft because the instrument is thought of in Gagaku. It is also always very loud.
Right.
And it's really easy to play very loud.
Right.
It is more difficult to play soft.
Mhm.
And so I like to explore the soft side of it so people will hear, it can play soft. It can do a diminuendo and teniente.
Right.
But I became a hichiriki player because I was a really bad shakuhachi player.
Oh, really?
Oh, really bad, really bad. I'm not even afraid to admit it. Um, I, uh, I think the second year that I started living in Tokyo and in New York,
Mhm.
I said I wanted to play one of the Japanese traditional instruments, and really the only one that I knew well enough to even think about was the shakuhachi. It was. I wanted to play a wind instrument,
Mhm.
and so shakuhachi, and I started studying here in Tokyo and also in New York with one of the best players and teachers,
Mhm.
and it just wasn't working for me.
Oh.
The For some people, producing the sound is easy, but it is a typical thing that producing the sound of a shakuhachi can be difficult. There were I mean, my fingers would move,
Mhm.
but often there'd be no sound coming out, or it wouldn't be a very, and I would be so analytical, like, asking the teachers, do I need faster air? Do I need slower air?
Mhm.
Does this muscle, and often they go, oh, no, 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 this is too much Western thinking, too
Uh-huh.
much clarinet thinking.
Mm.
And both teachers who did not know each other would just say, just blow and let the sound come out. And I'm going,
Yeah.
what do you think I'm doing? I was like, is it because my chin sticks out too far? Is it because I have an I mean,
Yeah.
it really was not working. And I wanted to play it at a professional level to use it in concerts.
Mm.
And so one day the Tokyo teacher said, do you know the hichiriki?
Mhm.
I went, wow, that's kind of subtle.
Mhm.
Oh, and I said, I know what it is, but I really knew almost nothing about it.
Mhm.
And he said, but you're very frustrated.
Mm.
For whatever reason, shakuhachi is not working for you. You're very frustrated. So maybe another instrument would be helpful. And I only knew the hichiriki in Gagaku.
Mm.
Never played it, but I knew that's what it was for. I said, well, I want to play traditional and contemporary music. So please introduce me a teacher who plays both.
Mhm.
I said, oh, then Itami Nakamura, she plays both. I went to her. I told her, the shakuhachi story, and we started the lesson. And about 15 minutes into it, she said, oh, you're going to be fine.
Wow.
The instrument made sense to me. I don't know if it's because if it was a reed instrument
Mhm.
instead of,
Uh-huh.
shakuhachi like a flute, but it made sense to me. I was a little frustrated at first because the range is kind of small,
Mhm.
but the more I played it, the more I loved it.
Oh, wow.
And it just sort of took on a life of its own. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So the hichiriki seems like such a different physical and spiritual experience from clarinet. Can you describe what it feels like to play it?
Um, the the sort of emotional,
Mhm.
mental part of it, away from the technical aspects of it,
Yes.
is the instrument, the reed, all that has basically not changed in 1,300 years. The music, the Gagaku music, has basically played the same.
Mhm.
Uh, there's some disagreement over like tempo
Mhm.
of certain pieces,
Mhm.
but when I'm playing and when I hear it, I think, wow, this is what a hichiriki player or the very few people who would have been hearing it would have heard this sound. They still make it out of the same material.
Mhm.
The reeds
Mhm.
still come from the very small location that's
Mhm.
on a river between Osaka and Kyoto. It's a cultural property now, so the reeds can still be made that way.
Mm.
And that really appealed to me. One of the things I like most about Japan is it's the ancient traditions that had stayed the same. And so to me, it's not like I'm going into a museum. This is still living, uh, even though it really hasn't changed so much. And when I study with hichiriki players, and you study the same way that they, it has been handed down for centuries of how to study it and how to make the sound. And a lot of what is on the what we would call sheet music, uh, a lot of that is not there. You have to have heard it from your teacher, what the sounds between the notes. And that to me is so exciting and so important because it is so different
Right.
than the way we study classical music. And that really appealed to me that I'm alive, the music is alive, but it's 1,300 years old. And these same vibrations have been going on for that amount of time. And then when you're playing with the sho and the yuteki and the koto to realize, oh, well, here's my friend who is not 1,300 years old, but is making the same sounds. And so the instrument and the sound sort of stays the same. And then we as players just put ourselves into it for however many years. But that sound, that tradition, which is honored so much, will continue.
Right. Wow.
And then the contemporary part of it, which, some traditionalists don't think we should be playing contemporary music on it. I love finding composers that will write for these instruments and bring something modern to it. So it brings a different aspect of it. It's not that it's keeping the instrument alive, because the instrument is obviously alive, but and bringing a contemporary sensibility to it, and also what the different composers will bring to it. Some will write pieces that sound almost exactly like Gagaku. I know it's not easy to write for the instrument, but having a concerto for hichiriki that Masatoru Goya wrote for it, was just incredible. It's like, oh, this concerto for the hichiriki, 1,300 years old, with a string orchestra, which is only a couple of hundred years old. And to combine those two worlds and that sound was incredible.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. And you were the very rare artist who can do both Western music and, like Asian, yeah, traditional music, especially like as a professional level. Very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, and it's fun when some new pieces for clarinet, whether they're it's being paired with traditional instruments, but it has changed the way I play the clarinet.
Right.
And I will ask composers sometimes where if it seems appropriate, I said, can I add some, and I'll add some hichiriki influences or some Gagaku inflections to it. And most of the composers are thrilled, once they hear it, what I'm doing. And it has even, this concept of this silence between the sounds that is often as important as the sounds. So even if I'm playing Brahms and you end a phrase, and on the page, there's a half note and there's a bar line, and then there's another half note. So you can be thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and just go on. But I use that sense of like, oh, this phrase has ended. we can take a breath. I mean, we're not talking a 3 second wait, but in context of let that music breathe and bring this element of ancient Japanese aesthetics and culture into the even the classical and romantic. And of course, much more when it's contemporary music, because they have a lot more freedom to do that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's why your work is like a form of a cultural diplomacy. Do you see yourself as a cultural ambassador? And if so, what are you trying to communicate?
That's cultural ambassador. I don't, I mean, I don't, I mean, that it's not a term I would put on myself, because
Really?
they, but I mean, I live in both countries for a long time now. And over, maybe the past 6 or 7 years have been spending more time in Vietnam and in Thailand and picking up some of those traditional instruments and learning them, and a couple of times in China and picking up those instruments. And I find it fascinating to the traditional music. And then always I'm thinking, oh, how can, because of the love of the hichiriki and what I feel has been successful with bringing it into my performing, that I feel, oh, can I bring some of these other instruments in? Of course, you meet the composers. So in those countries, and they're curious, like, oh, how can I bring this sona into classical chamber music or whatever? So I don't know. Cultural ambassador is such a strange term. I mean, I I don't uh I don't really put so many terms on myself. I'm just doing,
Right. What you well to do?
I'm just doing what I'm doing. Today I play the hichiriki, tomorrow it's the clarinet. I like to combine them, but I do like uh, the fact that the pieces that, like the Tokyo to New York series, that I tell the composers here in Japan, if you write me a piece, I mean, I'll premiere it here, but I will play it in New York or somewhere in the US. And I think that's important. There's very little Japanese music, contemporary music, played in the US, even in New York. There's not much.
Right.
And so it's exciting to me that go back and forth. And then the New York composers or the US composers, like, okay, yes, I have this music, I can play it in both places.
Right.
Yeah. So I find that exciting. And then when I find that sometimes composers get in touch with each other and then other grow from that, or performers. Sometimes it's a little weird when I find a performer, a clarinetist, playing a piece that was written for me. A little bit of a little bit of jealousy, like, oh, that's my piece. But then I read, no, then my second thought, and hopefully soon after the first thought, is like, oh no, this is good. This is really good, that something written for me and it's out there that someone else would want to play it.
Right, right. Wow. So I was more curious about, how you talk about the Tokyo to New York. So could you tell me about the moment you realized I want to create this project, and what was the spark that made you think this needed to exist?
Yeah, there was Doug. Oh no, hold on a second. Yeah, Doug De Silva, composer in New York. He had concert series, and he did a concert of Japanese influences, and he asked me to play on it. And that was like, oh, these are non-Japanese composers who were writing pieces, and there were also, I mean, there were guitarists, there were pianists on the program. And I thought, oh, that's, I'm living in both places. So then I thought, oh, approached him. I said, what if I did a program, me and piano, and I'd call it Nihon no Shiten, which is Japan influences. And I will ask non-Japanese composers, and most of them were from New York, to write something, a short piece, and I wanted them to write, like, think of Japan or think of Tokyo. What's the first thing you think of? And then write a piece about that or how it, and I said, it can be architecture, it can be anime, it can be music, it can be food. If I say the word Tokyo, what's your first thought? Then write that. So they did. And it was incredible. I mean, there were some pieces, I think there were two or three. Of course, they titled it Sakura, Sakura. And at first it's like, well, that's kind of corny, but it's okay, you know. And the pieces were beautiful. I mean, I questioned how many people are going to name their piece Sakura. So then I thought that it really works. So I turned it around. I asked Tokyo composers. I said, New York no Shiten. So New York influences. I said, write something when you think of New York. And again, don't care what it is, you know, something abstract like the energy of New York or the architecture, whatever. And the pieces were incredible. And it was really interesting. Then I did a program of both of them. It was really interesting, the Tokyo composers, how they thought of New York. So there were a lot of really angular, fast, abstract pieces. Whereas the Japanese pieces, who were not Japanese composers, were more fluid and flowing pieces. And so it was interesting that this is what composers, so then for several years and still do it back and forth, where I would ask Japanese composers to do the New York. Then I felt, I mean, I probably had, you know, maybe 45 of these pieces. And I thought, you know, I'm going to quit telling a composer what to write. So I would just ask composers, you know, write something. And I will play it on the series. I will play it in both countries. But I quit being concerned about what they were thinking. I thought that was easier for a composer. And I want to break out of that just New York, just Japan influences. So it could be anything, but still stick to New York and Tokyo composers. And the really nice thing about New York composers is it's international. Like you for this you're a New York composer. And so all of these New York composers, which are from all over the world. Now, in Tokyo, most of those composers are Japanese because there's not a lot of, but there are a few. Colleen Schmuckel, who's written a few pieces, a beautiful, beautiful composer, an incredible shamisen player. And she lives here, so she is a Tokyo composer. But it is less international here than in New York.
Right. Wow, that's so incredible story. So you've been performing like works by living composers for, you know, many, many years. So now you've premiered over 300 new works with some incredible composers. What's it like to be the first person to be bringing someone's musical visions to life?
That's my favorite. That is my favorite. Um, I'm, I feel, of course, they write the piece, they are the creator of the piece, but I feel like I have some part of the creation of the piece, or at least bringing it to life. And depending on the composer, you know, some composers deliver me the piece and they want no changes. This is what it is, and that's fine. Some, you know, will want to meet before they even write one single note. So those sort of extremes, and you go back and forth with some composers, like, well, this is not so good for me because it's written for me, so I can tell them, double tonguing in the super high range of the clarinet, you're not going to get that from me. If that has to be in your piece, you're going to have to get another clarinets to do it. But just the composers, they will know me. And if they don't know me well, then they can listen to audio or watch videos to see. And especially like with the hichiriki, I tell them, go to my hichiriki page, listen to all the different sort of styles of pieces, and you will hear what you think sounds good on the hichiriki, and you might also hear what you think doesn't sound good on the hichiriki, and that's me playing it. So you can write according to that, or they will, recently, J.P. Bessingham has written me some incredible pieces using hichiriki, and he was over the apartment one day, and he's like, "Oh, can you flutter on the hichiriki?" I said, yeah, okay. Can you sing while playing on the hichiriki? And I'm trying, like, I hadn't done it yet, but I was like, I can do it on clarinet, so I'm thinking I can do it. And then he's going, can you do little 16th note staccato flutters, like da da da, but and I was like, oh, let me try. I would say, and so I would do it, and it's like, oh, that works. So then he writes this stuff in, and so that to me is incredibly exciting, especially to expand the repertoire and the technical capabilities of the hichiriki. There's very little I'm going to do on the clarinet that is going to expand the technical capabilities. Might extend the repertoire, but not the capabilities. And it's fun to transfer clarinet technical things onto the hichiriki. But I know that is my favorite, to work with the composers. Yeah.
Right. So, so you're not only a performer, you're creating a relationship with the composers, and then, building a community, seems like. What do you hope happens when people come together for your concerts and festivals? And as an artistic director, how would you approach curating a program and festivals?
I like to keep it as open as possible. Like I said, with the, when I would do the pieces that were specifically these are composers, this is what they thought of New York. Even though the pieces may not have been all the same, but I like to keep it as open as possible. Part of that is when I go to a concert, I want to hear different things. I'm not so curious to hear an hour or an hour and a half of the same style. To me, that is what is exciting. And as a player, that's exciting to play these different styles. And hopefully hoping that the audience will like that. Or if they don't like one thing, then hopefully they'll like the next thing. And so they're also, hopefully an audience is curious. And so they can, whether it's the clarinet or especially the hichiriki, it's something new for them, or it's a new composer and they get excited about that. Or if it's composers in the audience, then they can get excited. If I play a clarinet and shamisen piece, and did last several of them, but this wonderful piece by Colleen, then another composer heard that piece and asked, oh, I want to write for that combination. So you get that excitement of something new, because contemporary music, by definition, it is new. And the composers want to write hopefully want to write something new.
Mm-hmm.
And mixing and matching the different countries, the different instruments, or even if it's, I've been on this run now of quite a few clarinet, cello, and piano pieces the last few years, because I think there is room for more of that piece. And I love the sound of that instrumentation.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the composers said, oh, can I add hichiriki into the trio? And so I'll say, okay, so I think it's nice to open up people's imagination for what is possible.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, I mean, you're the maybe rare person who, with like a lot of high energy to put on this all things together, and not only the clarinet or just performing, but you keep creating the a relationship with the composers and performers, and then curating these programs. Like, I don't know how many years you've done, like so many years, right? So inspired for me to get energy from you, and like, you're such an incredible person, and musicians I ever known. So thank you so much for telling me all this like inspirational process and story. Um, Maybe I have one or two questions left. Would you be okay with it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But also, Lenita, like for you,
Yeah.
so that the piece of yours that I played and recorded it, which will be released this summer, thank goodness. And that it was, especially when it was written during the pandemic, and the words were very powerful.
Oh,
It's not easy to play. I mean, the technical things were not so easy, but also saying these words during that time, it's hard because it's hard to be on the edge of tears
oh,
and to be able to speak the words. It's hard to play the clarinet because the muscles that are involved
changes.
yeah, and you get that adrenaline going, but it also brings something to that. And that is, of course, speaking and playing and stomping your foot. I mean, that is not in every clarinet piece, of course.
Right.
But knowing if that piece had just been handed to me and I didn't know the person, it would still have been a strong piece, but less personal.
Yeah.
Knowing that it came from you and when it came and what we were living through at that time made it more powerful. That even when I recorded it last summer, which was 4 years after it was written,
Right.
those feelings were still there. It was still raw. It wasn't like, oh, okay, I've played this a number of times. That happened 4 years ago. No, you put yourself into your sound world and try to make it as powerful as what is on the page, and hoping that that power of the piece transfers to someone just listening. I know it's maybe easier to present that kind of a piece when someone sees it. But I wanted to make sure that that energy and passion would also just transfer if someone is listening to it.
Right. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Your performance was like fantastic.
Thank you.
And you also add your energy into it. So I was so touched by your performance as well. So thank you. I'm so excited to have the recording.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
So maybe a little bit shift to the Gagaku.
Okay.
When you're performing traditional Gagaku, do you feel connect to something larger than yourself? What is that experience like?
This is what I was talking before about knowing
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
1,300 years.
Yeah.
And because I play contemporary music on this instrument, I I don't have to play or study Gagaku because they're two different worlds. But when I first started playing it, I thought it was important that I know the traditional stuff. And there's things that they do in Gagaku that are so, the inflections, the tonal inflections that are not done in even in contemporary classical music. I thought, oh, I want to know how to do them. And then I thought, being here in Japan, if I want to be taken seriously as a hichiriki player, and I am taking this ancient instrument out of its natural world, I thought it important that I understand that world it came from and respect it, not just on a intellectual level, but as a musician on a musical level, that, oh yes, I actually can play Gagaku. And the more Gagaku I play, the better my contemporary playing is. And it is two different sort of physical approaches. For contemporary music, I usually have to use a different reed that will expand its dynamic possibilities. But when I also study and who I'm studying with,
Right.
and knowing, oh, it's especially this person I'm working with now, very, very intensely each week, Shimada-san, phenomenal Gagaku player. And he comes from generation of these players. I believe his father was a show player, not a hichiriki player, but that this sound, it's more of a job, it's a lifestyle. And to me, that is so incredible. Even though I studied with Gervais Depire and I knew who his teacher was, and so you learn from that. This seems more ancient and more from the ear. And so I feel this connection with the ear more than I do with the clarinet.
Right. Wow. So have you tried Korean instruments before or never?
I tried the piri because it is similar to the hichiriki. And I had thought about, I had contacted someone to take lessons. I was thinking about buying one. And then I thought, I only have but so much time, because if I play the piri, then of course I want to play it in concerts.
Right.
And I still think about it like once a year, especially when I see a piri player, or someone will send me something that was written for piri and asking me, can I play it on hichiriki? And the range is different, and
Right.
sometimes the piece doesn't transfer to the hichiriki. So I go, oh, I want to play that instrument too. But I have not taken lessons. I do not own one because I thought I should spend time
More on hichiriki.
more on this. But the fact that you asked me a question, now I want to go out, and knowing that Korea is like 2 hours that way.
Yeah, it's very close.
Now it makes me want to do it again.
Yeah. You just try attempt to just taste it and see what happens.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a friends who work in the Gagaku orchestra, so maybe we can make a connection from it.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
I will pick up. First, I would of course get in touch with the piri player to ask what should instrument I get, because when I first started studying with Hitami, I got a plastic one because it was cheap. These are not cheap instruments.
Of course.
And after a couple of years, and I'm playing and doing fine, she said, you should get a real one.
Right.
And, made out of bamboo and the whole bit. And I was like, because of the sound of the hichiriki, it's not the most refined sound. And I thought, is it really that much different? Because it's an expensive instrument. As it is the sound that much different. And she said, let's, go to where the makers had, and I tried these different ones. I picked up one as the first time I played a real one. I picked it up and played a few notes and went, oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So like, okay. The intonation was better. The sound production was better. The tonal color, the whole thing. It was a lot better, not just a little better. It was a lot. So I was like, okay, so
That's it.
we'll do this. Yeah.
Wow. That's
But yeah, now you make me want to pick up a Piri.
Yay.
And of course, being, an arrogant musician, I'm thinking, oh, it's like the hichiriki. It'll be easy.
Hmm.
And then if I did, it'd probably humble me like, oh my goodness, it's not like a hichiriki.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
But now I'm more curious than before.
Yay.
Yeah.
So it could be the last question for today. What would you hope your work leaves behind when someone experiences your music for the first time? What would you want to stay with them?
Wow. Curiosity is probably the first thing that whatever they're hearing, hopefully they'll like it or whatever, or that they will be curious, whether it's the clarinet, whether it's the hichiriki, that they become curious about that music, especially if it's contemporary music, curious about the composer or the sound world. I think curiosity is the best thing. Ned Rorem, who is a good friend of mine and
Oh, yeah.
just passed away a few years ago at 99. And even when he was like in his 60s, so he would tell me for years, he'd say, stay curious. Amongst the many things that he would tell me, but you had to stay curious. And through, his long life, even, he played piano the day he died. He still would get up and play piano. And he was always asking questions. He was always very curious, sometimes curious about personal things, but he was always curious about music. Like we had quit going to concerts, but he wanted to know what's going on in the concert world. What are Japanese composers writing? Are there any Chinese composers? He didn't surf the web. He wasn't involved with, social media and all, but he's kept being curious about what was going on. So I would hope when I meet composers or when people hear my concerts or audio that they become curious about something.
Wow, that's great. That's great lesson for anyone who going to concert or musicians or composers. Yes.
Yeah. And when it's a composer, of course, the biggest thrill is if they don't know me and either they come across audio on the internet or they come to a concert. Of course, the biggest thrill is when they say, oh, can I write a piece for you? It's like, yes. Of course. It's thrilling that someone wants to write me a piece after hearing.
Right.
Yep.
It's just kind of personal question. Like,
Yeah.
so you ask a piece for composers to just write for me. So where this energy came from? You love to collaborate it, or
I did not start out as a contemporary player. Through school, heavy duty, classical, romantic type of stuff. And for quite a few years, I'm doing clarinet and piano concerts. And it was like, oh, how many more times can I play the Poulenc? Which is exciting, right?
Yeah.
How many more times am I going to play the Brahms? Or, I'd like to not play the Brahms for 20 years and come back to it. And also realizing, no clarinetists are making their living by playing broads. They have to do other stuff. And occasionally I would put a new piece on a concert. So premiere one piece and the rest is heavy duty classical romantic. Poulenc, or, Bernstein, if you want to call them contemporary or 20th century music. And then it was then working with the composers like, oh, this is really exciting. And then realizing, the logistical part of having to pay your rent, the practical part is like, oh, I'm getting paid more to play new music than old music. And it's exciting. And I feel like I have more say-so in the interpretation of it. And so more and more and more playing contemporary music to the point where now almost everything I play is composed for me. Although did a concert back in February, the Troy music series, and that incredible acoustics. Played a trio. Most of the concert was clarinet, cello, and piano. And played new pieces, played new piece by Dai Fujikura. And his program note about that was it was his sort of anti-string trio piece. He didn't like the violin, cello, piano combination years ago. He may now like them. And so I thought, oh, I can put the Beethoven trio in this program and pair them.
Right.
And it was so much fun. And I played with people I play with a lot. And we read through the Beethoven and we're like, oh, this is so much fun. And most of what we play is new music in that trio. And it was fun because I'd not played Beethoven with them before, and going, oh, the cellist did this with that phrase. Oh, that's interesting. And the pianist was doing this articulation. Let me try that. And I'm going to try that. And it felt like we were approaching it like it had just been written. Of course, tonally, it's very old, but the way we approached it was as if it was new piece just written for us. And we had we weren't worried about, how Piatigorsky had performed it or anything.
Right.
We were bringing our new selves to it. And it was so exciting to do that.
Wow. I mean, all composers here is so happy to this story because we always looking for wonderful performers like you. Anything to add from your side, more finding composers or, invitation to composers, anything like that?
I feel like I've talked too much.
Yeah.
But this is to me it's exciting. I'm the chair of the International Clarinet Association New Music Committee, and we try to inspire people, clarinetists, of course, to play new music. There's still quite a few, musicians who don't want to play new music, or they think, Poulenc is new music or contemporary, and it's not. And there's nothing wrong with the device about but to try to convince them that not only is it good, there's good music, there's bad music. We're going to run across it all. You do not have to like everything you play. I don't like everything you play. But not only, as a player, but, you're a musician, you're an artist, you're a clarinetist. I feel it's important that we keep this music alive. If it had stopped, we would just, like, for two clarinets and piano, we'd have the Mendelssohn, duo. And who I'm kind of tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
It's a fun piece, but how many times do you want to hear it? How many times do you want to play it? So as players, we can inspire, hopefully, composers to write pieces for us, and we keep the art of composition, the art of clarinet playing alive. I don't know, we elevate it or whatever, but we do keep it alive. We keep it present, and hopefully there's something about it being alive that's exciting, and that other people behind us or with us will also want
Sure.
to do that. And I feel it is so important
Yes,
that
I agree.
clarinetists and because I don't play and hichiriki players, the
Yes.
steward, but
Yes.
that we do play new music, because that we're alive now. This is what this is. It should be what we do. That it is normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important to hear from you. You are the one of the leading active contemporary players and artists. So thank you so much for sharing all the beautiful story. And thank you for being with me today. I hope I hope you invite you back in another.
Oh yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
And thanks. It's so good to see you and to
Thank
talk to
you.
you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day.
You
To
too. Bye bye.
bye.